Hello guys, Sparkfinger here, your old friend. In this video I wanted to discuss exactly why Latitude implemented the new community guidelines. Why they decided to censor more than they planned to censor before. And what could be the possible reasons for that? I'm not claiming to know the truth. I don't have any insider information contrary to popular belief. So this video is going to be mostly speculative. But of course we still have examples from real life, where companies had to either suffer or fight in courts, or gain infamous reputation and become very popular in the end. Let's think about Rockstar for a second. You guys remember Jack Thompson? I mean, according to YouTube statistics, most of you are old enough to remember Jack Thompson. Jack Thompson was a really infamous and famous at the same time lawyer who tried to sue Rockstar and Rockstar founders for creating a violent game that promoted violence and sexuality and promoted sexuality. What a funny way to phrase it. It was mostly centered around the hot coffee mod for GTA San Andreas, and it was a mod, but it was a mod unlocking the built-in code to play a sexy game in GTA San Andreas. And that was a massive scandal for everyone, just like when someone found that there were nipple textures in Oblivion. They were there in the code, but they were not actually in the game, so you had to unlock it rather than install a separate mod. Oh yeah. Now let's think about it. Does all this stuff apply to modern days? I mean, Rockstar became the richest video gaming company. Well, probably technically not the case since they're owned by a bigger company. But yeah, they are the biggest in many ways because GTA 5 is the biggest. It's the biggest, one of the most profitable games. I'm not exactly sure if it's Minecraft or GTA. GTA 5, that is more expensive. I mean, it is more profitable. Now let's think about it. Does it apply to AI Dungeon? Is it possible that there might be, let's say, some media outrage? Let's go back for a second. Let's go back, let's say, back to March, and imagine nothing had happened. Nothing had happened so far, but let's imagine every day people started to post more and more, what's the word? More and more racy stuff, more and more racy stories from AI Dungeon. You know, just like when the Anons from 4chan started posting, I personally loved that. I loved that everyone was outraged. It was kind of funny to me. I mean, I didn't care too much. Back then, I wasn't that involved. The troll in me, oh, Mr. Hyde, the troll in me. He loved seeing all that. And I personally didn't care too much. Let's think for a second. What would have happened if Latitude didn't remove Explore? I guess the Anons from 4chan would get tired of upvoting silly stuff. I mean, mostly it was a work of one person, right? It was most work of one person that just posted links and recommended to people to go and upload it to see funny reaction from the normie community of AI Dungeon. And I guess at some point the Anons would get tired. But let's say hypothetically, people started posting more and more inappropriate stuff. Let's just forget about any real-world applications and imagine that people would start posting more and more real-life stuff. I mean, I posted very inappropriate stuff. I personally like to play around with the idea of eugenics. You know, I'm not exactly sure, but I think Elon Musk was quoted that eugenics are definitely inhumane, but sadly they are inevitable in the future of humanity. At some point, humanity will simply have to start experimenting on breeding people, and I agree that it is inhumane, and I honestly think that eugenics would fail, but I'm still insanely curious, and it's just such an unhealthy curiosity. Dr. Hyde, Dr. Hulk, right? It's an unhealthy doctor that just is curious for the wrong reasons. And I started posting I posted one meme about eugenics, because my character suddenly started talking about eugenics. And imagine what would have happened if some, let's say, I don't know, infamous company that likes to, I don't know, post provocative articles, decided to look at me and just take my content about eugenics and say, oh, AI dungeon promotes eugenics. That's the same tactics. They tried to cancel PewDiePie. PewDiePie like said one or two things and they tried to cancel him, portray him as the worst person in the world. That was such a funny joke back in the day. So many movies and TV shows were making a joke about how poor little Swedish PewDiePie is the worst person in the world. And just imagine for a second what would happen if one of those silly canceling companies who just create drama out of nothing wanted to take a look at AI Dungeon and find memes that involve eugenics in my case, or peace stuff, or, I don't know, jokes about Jews, just like back in the 2016 when internet was an edgy place, or any more jokes. Imagine if, just hypothetically imagine, what would happen? I personally don't think anything significant would happen. It would be a scandal, right? It would be a significantly smaller scandal than this. But there is still a chance that this could have been picked up by, let's say, some very large media, and somehow Latitude would now be in position that PewDiePie has been in so many times. I mean, honestly, obviously, all the infamy was great for PewDiePie, because without all the infamy, he wouldn't have grown up. That's my personal opinion. He wouldn't have gained so many subs. And frankly, bad publicity is simply great publicity. It's great because people nowadays, that's my personal observation, of course, they love to root for the underdog, for the anti-hero. And PewDiePie was a perfect anti-hero. And Latitude could have been a perfect anti-hero as well. They could have taken a stand for absolute freedom of speech. But honestly, there's a thing about AI Dungeon. It can be so shocking. It can be much more shocking than a pasty white dude saying the N-word while playing PUBG. It can be so much more shocking. Oh, pasty white millionaire here. I hope I'm not envious. I love PewDiePie. Okay, now back from this tangent. Would this have been a big scandal for Latitude? We can never know. I mean, for PewDiePie, clearly it turned out great. He got 100 million subs. From being an anti-hero, the infamous guy, the bad boy, the edgy boy. It was working out great for Filthy Frank, because frankly he was the funniest thing ever in 2016. And too bad I was away from home back then and I didn't check out the internet frequently enough. It could have turned out great for Latitude. And, simply hypothetically speaking, it could have turned out bad for them, because they could have lost their funding from OpenAI, and they would have never gotten... And OpenAI, on the other hand, could have lost their investment from Microsoft, which is, frankly, simply unlikely. So there are people on the Reddit occasionally bringing up that Latitude doesn't care about what you write in their stories. I mean, clearly they do. They do have an image of a perfect player in their head. It's a perfect player, very simple, nerdy, normal person like me who likes to play Dungeons and Dragons. He allows himself to play an occasional erotic story, but he never takes it too far. He doesn't play not safe for work stories about nationalities, about abuse, about minorities, about anything that is frankly too painful to think about. Something pain-inducing for people all over the world. Yes, minorities, races, nationalities. Bad stuff, like genocide. I guess I'm their perfect player, a guy who likes to play Dungeons and Dragons. Occasionally he permits himself to take it, I don't know, play a funny, sexy story, but I don't allow myself to take it too far, except when I'm curious, just morbidly curious about things like eugenics, and I'm not sure. And as I mentioned before, I'm simply quoting Elon Musk here, that the humanity, according to Elon Musk, frankly, it might be a bad quote from me. One day we'll have to turn to eugenics, but it's most definitely, under any moral guidance, is a bad thing. It's a bad thing because humans are us, and we are not supposed to be experimented on outside of our own volition. Oh yes, more moral stuff from me, like I'm some kind of moral philosophy professor. I did take one semester of moral philosophy, but not really. I was too lazy. I was too lazy and a bad student. Okay, it doesn't matter. Well, so basically we've come to conclude that there could have been a hypothetical scenario where Latitude could have never, let's say, implemented any censorship. And out of that scenario, there could have been two outcomes. Latitude could have either lost all of their funding, or they could have taken a stand for freedom of speech and become a bad boy, the anti-hero for the community, for contrarian community. They could have become the bad boy like PewDiePie was the edgy boy. They could have gotten more popular, but that's also another hypothetical scenario. As I said, I don't know what they plan, and I don't know why they're doing it. I'm just taking a look at different approaches. There are people who say that the reason all this had to happen is simply because they are trying to protect themselves from bad publicity, and I mean, that seems somewhat feasible to me. Really feasible, honestly. Why wouldn't they try to protect themselves from bad publicity? That's exactly the number one reason they had to not just implement all this quietly, but they had to take a stand. They had to simply do something as normal as virtue signaling. All they had to do is virtue signaling. I mean, if you take a random person from the street and say, would it be okay if there was a game where you could, I don't know, kill 6 million people or kill minorities or stuff like that, they would agree that this game is probably not healthy. Just take a random person, take a boomer, take a zoomer who doesn't know anything about AI dungeon, take a Gen Xer, take a millennial. 90% of the time they're gonna say, no, that's not a very good game. That's like a game for sickos. But, you know, that could have been any one of us, because we are just a part of the society. We all share some herd mentality. We share some of it. But then we find out about AI Dungeon, we get attached to it, addicted to it, and our opinion changes. We think that this game is no longer bad. And I personally agree that it's not bad. I just wish we could have lived in a refined, quintessentially separate world where we could avoid any repercussions for our gameplay, where we could simply actually have absolute freedom. But no, we do live in the real world, and whatever we do, no matter how innocent, has its repercussions, you know, like the butterfly effect. I mean, butterfly effect is kind of a silly thing, but it's really silly, but it sort of works. It's just, you can never know how it works. It's sort of a simply random thing. So yeah, we've discussed 3 hypothetical scenarios, one of which is somewhat realistic, because it is sort of happening. The reason that Latitude is doing that is because they want to avoid bad publicity. Latitude and OpenAI. We don't know their relationships between one another. They want to avoid bad publicity, and that's number one reason they had to take a stand. Maybe they believe in what they do. Maybe they just believe that a significant portion of us, the community, is somehow actually perverted sickos. I would understand them, but I don't understand them. I would, but I don't understand them if they think that. But we don't know if they do think that. They just intentionally wag. They were intentionally wag in their community post, and we can't know why they're so wag. Number one question that they still haven't answered. Will the players be getting banned for, let's say, playing out genocide scenarios that are pertaining to real life? Will the characters be banned for playing out, you know, not safe for work edgy stuff, not related to peace stuff, not necessarily related to sexuality, but somehow related to, let's say, genocide, terrorism, stuff like that, things that I mentioned in my first video, things that are simply worse than peace stuff, because a lot more people suffer and cry in pain from them in real life. So yeah, I think basically I made most of my points so far, but let's imagine that they don't care about publicity. They don't care about publicity, but why would they actually implement that? Let's take a look at another hypothetical scenario. Let's say OpenAI is not involved absolutely, and Walton brothers are just intensely religious brothers who think they're doing a good thing for the world. Would I understand them personally? I mean, personally, as an individual, I obviously would understand them, but as a member of community, I wouldn't. If they were to come out and tell me that they are doing it for moral reasons, I wouldn't believe them, and I would call them hypocrites, because clearly there is monetary benefit to what they are doing. They are trying to clean up their image, and clean image is always good, isn't it? That's just the sad truth. Which is why you can only allow yourself to have an unclean image if you're doing it within allotted limits. Like, take a look at GTA 5, for example. There are no kids in this game. And the baddest of guys, the main anti-hero, the most evil anti-hero, one of the most worst anti-heroes in game history, Trevor Phillips, he's a very unique character because he's a cannibal and a rapist, but he rapes men, not women. We never saw any indication that he rapes women. He in fact always makes statements in GTA 5 that he respects women in the utmost manner, and he has a very complex relationship with his mother, which is of course a hilarious subplot. He's a very unique anti-hero because he's like sort of a woke evil person. They did it just the right way with Trevor Phillips, because Trevor Phillips was like a bad guy, but he wasn't a despicable bad guy. He wasn't like Jack the Ripper going around killing women, killing weak and innocent. He was like a super tough guy who raped men and ate men and did meth. And he was generally the most lovable villain possible. So GTA 5 did it right, but Latitude can't do it right. They can't create a villainous subplot where a villain is likable, because they are not responsible for the content in their game. Just think about that. When you have a game that's completely linear, like GTA 5, you can control everything. You can add funny evil stuff, funny edgy stuff that everyone will love you for. But you can do it in a way to please everyone, because Trevor Phillips, he respects women and he respects black people. He never even said the N-word. He said, "Oh, Franklin, my N-word." Yeah, the last time I fully played it was in 2014 on my old Xbox 360. So yeah, guys, I think we discovered four ways why, four hypothetical reasons, four hypothetical scenarios. Latitude could have gotten cancelled by the community and OpenAI if they never did this. I mean, it's purely hypothetical. We don't know if that could have happened. We don't know if that is something that happens in real life. Or they could have gotten a reputation of an anti-hero, of a bad boy like PewDiePie, and also gotten themselves 100 million subs for standing for freedom of speech. Or the realistic scenario that is happening right now, the reason they are doing it is because they are trying to commercially save their face, which is what some people, not a lot of people, are saying on Reddit and on 4chan. They're trying to save their face and to preserve their funding. That sounds fairly realistic and reasonable, but we still don't have proof of that. We don't have actual proof as logical and reasonable as it is. When they come out and say that, let's say, we would have done it, we've had to do it, or we would have gotten cancelled, then we would have proof of that. We had to do it to preserve our own beautiful white face. And that's poor phrasing. Beautiful, clean imagery. Or reason number 4, we discussed that they simply cannot control the bad, not safe for work, edgy stuff in their game. In GTA 5, Trevor Phillips is a bad guy, but he's a bad guy in just the most peculiar, fun way. He doesn't do actually bad stuff that would make the majority of people despise him. Even Stephen Ogg, the voice actor for Trevor, he's not just voice actor, he's also just actor and motion capture, and he has a face. He was surprised how many people love Trevor, because Trevor actually respects women. He doesn't rape women, he rapes men and he eats men, and he doesn't hate minorities. And he is basically a hipster, a dirty old proto-hipster who loves doing meth. Yeah, those are 4 scenarios, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at the Reddit. I mean, I'm just sitting here browsing Reddit because I know it can be enjoyable if you're just sitting here listening to me rambling. There are just 4 hypothetical scenarios that we discovered. Let's take a look at what else I have here in the browser. Oh, here is very interesting thing. A new GPT-J model has been released, and it's very interesting. I don't know if it will be implemented for games in any way. I ran a micro micro experiment and just... I mean, I've been playing around with it for a while, a lot of times, so let's take a look at what I put in. I put in a trolley input, 10 reasons why Star Wars prequels are better than the original trilogy. Han is still in the film and provides much of the humor. The planets are more interesting, Hoth for example, and less predictable, so yeah, you can see it for yourself. It's kind of... It confused itself, it thought about the original trilogy. I mean, it's still a lot of fun, it's very coherent. And it managed to generate a massive amount of text within seconds. I don't know, maybe when it gets fine-tuned it can be something significantly more impressive. It can be like a three-headed dragon. A smog cubed, you know? It can be the most powerful thing ever. So I ran a little bit of a comparison to, let's say, Dragon, and I played the same scenario in AI Dungeon. Top 10 reasons why Star Wars prequels are better than the original trilogy. The music score is fantastic, special effects, obviously. The Zeros are more advanced than 80s and 70s. The characters... Yeah, now AI Dungeon started to troll everyone. They started to agree with the trolley prompt and agree that prequels are better than the original trilogy. Obviously, they are not better because they are pandering to a large audience and to kids specifically. The original sort of had a tiny bit more style, a tiny bit more soul. But I personally still have a very warm place for prequels in my heart because when I was a little kid, I watched them 100 times. 100 times the first, episode 1, 2 and 3, I watched them 100 times. And I loved Qui-Gon Jinn and I related with little Anakin, and then with the teenage Anakin. Oh yeah, and I really loved young Obi-Wan, Ewan McGregor. Yeah. The characters are blended one... Yeah, it's just trolling us. Well, the prequels at least make an attempt at having interesting characters. The acting, okay, it's mostly bad, but it's better than the wooden performances from original films. Very insulting. Very trolly in it. The effects combined with the music in the final battle between Anakin and Obi-Wan. That was a great scene. Yeah, well, that's true. Undeniable. A great scene. A great scene that begat a lot of memes. The dialogue, at least there is more of it, and it's not so dry. Oh yeah, it's actually reading the internet from here. Palpatine, he is just a more interesting character, even if he isn't as developed. The romance between Anakin and Padme. The love story in the original movies is really bland and boring. Well, there wasn't really a love story even. The fact that Jar Jar Binks isn't them. Yeah, that's trolling us. The prequels weren't meant for children. So they are darker and more mature, now that's outright incorrect. But they are indeed darker in many ways, because that was the way of the Zeros, of the naughties. Okay guys, let's once again to reiterate what we did today. We discussed 4 possible hypothetical scenarios as to why AI Dungeon had to do what they did, or what would have happened if they hadn't done it. And then we took a look at the new GPT-J thing. I mean, I'm personally really excited. Let's go here again. It manages to generate a massive amount of text very quickly, and it's fairly coherent. I mean, if it gets fine-tuned, I have no doubt it can be even more powerful than Dragon. Or maybe I am incorrect. Please make sure to tell me in the comments. And we're all looking forward to even more development. On many sites, people are talking about all the different ways to play around with AI text generators, because people are just so hooked and addicted to playing around with text generators after AI Dungeon first blew up in January, and before that it kind of blew up in summer 2020. And now it's blowing up because of the scandal, and still attracting a lot of customers, while simultaneously losing old customers. I don't know what will happen in the future. I don't know what will happen in the future. I don't know what will happen with AI Dungeon, with novel AI, with all the small new AIs, AI games. I hope you guys enjoyed my little, well, sort of discussion on why Latitude did what they did. Did they really have to do it or not? And see you guys next time. Sparkfinger out.